Also new tonight, the Minneapolis police chief is criticizing the release of a draft report questioning interactions between police and paramedics.
That report suggests some MPD officers have asked medical responders to use a powerful sedative during calls, the same sedative known as the date rape drug. KARE 11's Kent Erdahl has more tonight. He's in our newsroom. Kent?
Well, Randy, the drug at the center of this report is ketamine, which Hennepin EMS has used since 2008 to sedate people who are agitated or who pose a risk to themselves or others. But according to the Star Tribune, the Office of Police Conduct Review found that officers were requesting that it be used during police calls. The draft report obtained by the Star Tribune found the number of ketamine injections during MPD calls increased from 3 in 2012 to 62 last year. According to the newspaper, the drug was sometimes used when people were restrained and at times when no apparent crime was committed. And in multiple cases, it caused heart or breathing failure. Now, tonight, the Hennepin Healthcare issued a statement saying, "We only recently saw a copy of the draft report and met with the city yesterday to express concerns about what we believe are significant inaccuracies. We have reviewed the 4 cases mentioned in the draft report that involve the use of ketamine by Hennepin EMS and have concluded that those met the protocol and were medically justified." Now, tonight, the Minneapolis mayor warned that the draft report is unfinished and stressed that medical decisions were made by medical personnel. The Minneapolis police chief called the draft inaccurate, but neither man offered any specifics. They did, however, acknowledge that the police policy has now changed because of it. The mayor ended by saying, "At the end of the day, our policy should be clear. Cops should not direct medical professionals on health-related issues, and medical professionals should not take those directives from cops." Back to you.
All right. Thank you.